Hey, this is Bob from INSYDIUM and this is part 3 of our snow peel tutorial. In this video we're going to take our scene and set up some Cycles 4D lighting. We'll make a custom material for our sticky lollipop candy and we'll make some custom geometry which we'll use as render instances. So let's get started. So here we are in Cinema 4D in our lollipop scene and we're going to start by texturing our geometry. So with that in mind, what we can do is just hold Alt and Control down and just deactivate this system, and let's just have a look. And for now, let's just concentrate on our lollipop geometry so we can get our bool, hold Control Alt, deactivate all that and make it all invisible. So now we just have our lollipop, and we had this mesh that we created from those painted particles. That's in this system here. Let's just open it up and you'll remember that we created this mesh here, which is a polygon object, and we actually are going to want to texture that. So let's just bring that out of that X Particles painted system, and what we could do, we could put that alongside the various different bits of geometry which are creating our lollipop. So let's just drag this into our lollipop, and we could rename it, couldn't we? Let's call it Stuck Particles Mesh. Let's just change that plus to an underscore so we're consistent. There we go. So now we know what that is. Alright, so what we have here is our Cinema 4D materials, the red and the white, that we were just using for display purposes in the viewport. But we're going to be doing this in Cycles 4D. So let's go to our material manager on this button here. And let's look, we'll just delete all these out. We don't need these Cinema 4D materials. And then let's just highlight all of these tags and delete those. So now we can start with a clean plate. Now what we're going to do is we'll set up the lighting first and then we will texture our lollipop. Now one thing, if we just have a look at our beauty again, you can see the angle we have this. Obviously our lollipop is kind of leant over as it's stuck in the snow. It's not sticking straight up. It's at an angle, maybe 30 to 40 degree angle. So we want to do that with our geometry as well, and then we can set up that lighting. So let's just move this out. So to do that, let's just hit NA to hide the lines. What we want to do is lean all of this over, and we also need to lean over all of the bool geometry as well, otherwise our spheres won't be intersecting in the correct place and the snow shell won't be in the correct place. So to make sure all of this gets reorientated at the same time, let's take the lollipop and the bool, they're both highlighted now. Let's hit Alt G, which groups them together in a new null, or you could just manually do that, but Alt G is the shortcut. For this null, let's rename it and just call it Scene Geo. And then with this null, if we go to the coordinates, look, we can adjust the pitch angle here to get what we want. And I'd say, I'm guessing it's going to be about, probably one about -30, might be a little bit too much. Let's have a look. So we're just eyeballing this. Something along those lines is looking pretty good. Arguably, look, if we go back to our beauty, arguably you can tell from this that maybe it's slightly more angled. But look, it doesn't need to be exact, does it? Let's put it at -30 and we'll leave it at that for now. So we've moved all of that geometry together, including all of that bool geometry. So that means if we reactivate our particles and reactivate our bool, make all of this visible again, and if we hit play, those particles will now simulate from the newly positioned geometry. All of the spheres which are cutting out that geometry are all happening in the same place. So we've got our scene working, but now basically we've just angled it differently. Now the only thing that we may need to adjust is we might need to adjust the direction of the wind, because we're going to want these particles to be kind of maybe blowing a bit more diagonally this way. But that's something that we can look at a little bit later. We're not concerned with that just now. So let's deactivate our system snow particles once more. We don't need to see those. And again, we'll just deactivate the bool and hide the bool because we don't need to see that. We're just going to concentrate on rendering our lollipop. Okay. So let's go first of all to our INSYDIUM menu, to Cycles 4D, which is what we're going to render with, and let's bring in the real-time preview. There's our real-time preview, and at the moment we've got a completely black screen, even though this is rendering, and that's because we don't have any lights in the scene, so it can't see anything. So let's just leave our preview there, and what we can do is go to our INSYDIUM menu, Cycles, and we want to bring in a light kit. We want a softbox. Let's bring in a softbox. Here it is in our scene, and it's pointing behind our geometry. So obviously we're not seeing anything. But as we drag this, now we can see in our real-time preview our lollipop. Okay, very good. So now before we do anything else, let's get a camera position which is going to be close to what we're going to be using when it comes to actually rendering. So we'll go to the INSYDIUM menu, we'll go to Cycles 4D and bring in a camera. Let's just move this preview window down a bit. Here you can see our Cycles 4D camera, which is a regular cinema camera but with a Cycles 4D tag on it. So let's look through that camera. And now what we want to do is just come into a position in our viewport which is going to match that beauty. So we could just shut down that real-time preview for now. We need to be really in close to this, and it is something. So now the camera is actually going to be animated, so this isn't going to be a static camera, but it's going to be something along these lines. And what we're wanting is the center of, if we have a look at our, let's look, have a look at our beauty again. So you can see the camera is animating down, and our focus is being drawn towards this central part of our candy. And so we're looking at kind of this central point as it moves, and it's kind of respecting that golden ratio. This is what we're looking at. So we need to mimic something along these lines. So it's going to be, we're looking at something like this. And arguably our scene geo here could be angled a bit more. Now I'm looking at it. So let's try -35, which is giving us that kind of flatter look. And let's try even more. Let's try -40. Okay, something along those lines. That's going to work for us for now. Let's just keep it at that. All right. So now that we have got that, let's lock that camera off so we can't accidentally move it. So we'll go to the camera, tags. We're going to go to the rigging tags, and there's a rigging tag called a protection tag. If we stick that on, just by its default, even if we try, we can't move that camera now. Look, I'm trying to orbit and it won't let me. Excellent. So now that we have that camera sorted, if we come out to this viewport. Now we're not seeing that camera because actually I've got the camera visualization switched off in my viewport settings, and I'll show you where we've done that. If you go up to the filter tab here in the viewport, you can see that, look, I've got camera switched off. If I switch it back on, there is our scene camera that we've just brought in and locked off. Now at the moment, look, this is the focus distance here. This is this part is going to be in focus. So let's drag that way down. And again, this doesn't need to be exact at this point, but we want to make sure that that focal distance is kind of near the middle of our lollipop. That's kind of going to be the hero area of the lollipop. All right, very good. So now let's just look back through that camera. Let's go to our INSYDIUM Cycles 4D. Let's bring up our real-time preview again. And this is going to start rendering. And when it does, right, so there is our lollipop. Now here's a really cool trick. What we can do is if we select this camera, so it's selected in the object manager, and then come down here and click on this lock camera button, I can now come out of this in my viewport and move around, and the real-time preview is staying locked to that camera. So that's really useful. So now what we're able to do is position our lights. Now this first light at the moment is just shining straight towards it, and we actually want it to be kind of almost adjacent to it. So let's pick this camera and we're going to move it in 3D space. Let's hit R for the rotate tool. Let's rotate it around, say 90 degrees. And this camera, this light wants to be quite a big one. This is going to create some really nice lighting effects as it shines through our translucent snow particles. So something like that, we could press R, maybe angle it down a little bit. And you can see this updating live in our viewport. It makes it really handy. Okay, so that's pretty good. Let's go to our softbox settings. We'll go to the Object tab. Let's change the color. We want this to have a blue tint to it. And we want it to be much stronger. At the moment the strength is at 1. Let's just try. I'm going to just put it at something like 15. So it's really bright. And that'll be fine for now. So that's going to be our first light. Okay. So now what we want is a second light. So what we could do is, look, let's just hold this softbox, highlight it. Let's hit E to get this direction tool selected, the move tool selected. And what we want to do is move this across the world Z. So if I hit, at the moment this axis is the local axis for the object. Because we've rotated it, it's kind of pointing down a bit. If I hit W, it switches it to the world coordinates. Hit W again, it switches back to the object. And you can do that manually with this button here, the coordinate system. So let's hit W. I'm going to hold Control, and that's going to make a duplicate over here. Then I'm going to hit R, and then W again for the world coordinates. And then let's rotate this 180 on the heading. So now that's pointing down. Just going to move it back a little bit. This one is going to be much smaller. Something like this. Move it across a bit. Okay, and this second one, let's move it below here in the Object Manager. This second one, we want this to be, this is going to be our orange light. So let's leave it at something like that for now. Okay. So you can see if we have a look at our real-time preview here, if we switch off the blue light, this is the illumination that we're getting from that orange one. And then if we switch on the blue and take off the orange, this is the blue. So you see when we have our orange light, it's illuminating these shadowy areas with that kind of orange glow. And if we have a quick look at our beauty again, we can actually see that. We can see, look, the blue light is illuminating all of these nice translucent pieces of snow, and we're getting a blue light highlight on our candy, but then we're also getting this orange light highlight on that candy as well, and we can see a bit of an orange tint to the shadow areas of that translucency. Okay, so that's our lighting sorted out. That's looking pretty good. So now we've got our lighting sorted. Now we're able to move on to texturing our candy. And actually, before we do that, let's just dock this real-time preview into our interface here. So we can do that by clicking on these 3 lines, dragging it, and then look, this can be docked to any part of our Cinema 4D interface. So let's just put it next to our Material Manager here. So there is our real-time preview docked here, and now we can move on to getting these textures sorted out for our candy. So what we need to do is make a red and a white one for our lollipop. And if you go to our lollipop null here, you can see we've got our sweep white and our sweep red, which we need to give our textures. So what we'll do is we'll make one texture and then we'll duplicate it and make one white and one red. So let's go to our Material Manager here, and we'll click this arrow. We want to go to Cycles 4D, and we're going to make a surface material, and we're going to start with a principled BSDF, which is our kind of do-all material. So if we click on that, here it is in our Material Manager. Let's go to the Basic tab, and let's call this one Candy. We'll start with the red, Candy Red. And so let's put it on our Candy Sweep Red. So now we want to edit this. So if we double click it, we get our Cycles 4D node editor, which really is a fantastic, responsive and really good to work with node editor. So look, let's just close our material manager down and we'll move this across a bit. Now obviously if I was working in a situation where I wasn't recording the screen, I would definitely be working on 2 displays here, and that gives you a lot more real estate to be able to make adjustments to the node editor, to look at the real-time preview, and to be able to make adjustments to the scene as well. But obviously we need to get this all within one screen, so I may be kind of shuffling some of these windows around. So this is our node editor. So every material shader node will be given a output. So obviously we've got our principal BSDF, which is the node that sorts out all of the specular and the color and all that stuff. And then the output of that we feed into the surface of the object in which we are texturing, which is our sweet red. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we can change this base color, first of all, to give it something that is a bit more close to what we want. So let's just make it a basic red, and we're going to make this much more sophisticated, but at the moment, there we go, we've got that on our sweet red. Now the reason we've actually, look, we're looking at it and we can see this red on all of our lollipop. Why is that? Well, in actual fact, remember that we are joining our sweet red and our sweet white with this join object. So actually this join object is what's being rendered at the moment, not these 2 separate ones. And because in our join we have said, look, we want the textures from any children objects to be rendered, it's only seeing one texture and it's applying it to all of the join. So when we get 2 separate ones, it will be respected, but at the moment, because we only have one texture, the join is just using that to texture everything. We don't need to worry about that just for now. So what we want to do is, first of all, we obviously need this to look a little bit more sophisticated. It's just at the moment a flat, shiny object. You want this to look like candy. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a normal map, and we're going to make a nice kind of bumpy, kind of noisy texture to the surface of some of this. So the way in which we're going to do that is we're going to use a noise shader. So let's right click to bring in a new node, and we're going to go to the textures, and we want a noise texture. Now if we bring that in, here's our noise texture. Now a really cool thing with Cycles is if you want to see what just this node looks like on your geometry, all you need to do is click on one of the outputs. So we can either output a color or a factor of this noise texture. So the color, let's just have a look. So we can see, look, there's that color noise texture being applied to our lollipop, and we could also do the factor, which is a value between 0 and 1, which shows it as a black and white value. So that's pretty cool. Now we want to make sure that this noise texture is mapped correctly to our geometry, so it's not kind of stretched out. So to do that, we need to give it what's called a texture coordinate. So let's do that. Let's right click. We're going to go to an input, and we want a texture coordinate node. And here, look, we've got, if this was a polygon object and you'd done some UV mapping, we could use that UV map to make sure that our noise is mapped correctly. And there's other ones, there's the camera, there's the normals. Now what we're going to use is the object. So let's click on, so object is a really good one to use. If you've got a primitive object in your scene that doesn't have a UV map, then object is usually a good one to make sure that the mapping is going to be correct. So if we put this object into the vector, that means this noise has now been mapped correctly to this object. And if we go back to that color, now you can see it does. I'm not sure if this is coming across in the video recording, but there's no stretching to that noise. This has been mapped perfectly to the surface of our lollipops. That's looking much better. All right, let's just make our node editor a bit bigger. We'll give ourselves a little bit of room. So now what are we going to do with this color information? Well, actually, we are going to use the black and white values of this noise, which we can get from the factor, to drive a height map to give us some nice bump. So we're going to right click, And if we go to the vector nodes, there is a bump. If we click on bump, this is really cool. So this bump will take a black and white image as a height map as the input, and it'll spit out a normal map, which we can then use to distort the look of our surface on our geometry. So look, if we just take that black and white value of the noise texture into the height of our bump map, and then stick this normal that it's generated into the normal of our principled shader, now we have got that bump mapped to our red candy. Now this obviously isn't what we want yet, this doesn't look right, but we can see that it is working. So what we need to do is, let's go back to viewing the output of our noise texture. This at the moment is far too diffuse, so we need to do a couple of things. First of all, we need to add some contrast to this black and white image. So let's do that, and we're going to do that with a color ramp. So we're going to right click, we're going to bring a converter and a color ramp in, and we're going to put the factor of our noise into the factor of our color ramp, and we're going to output the color into that height map. Now if we go to the color of our color ramp, again we're going to preview the output of just this node. So let's do that. And you can see if I switch it off again and switch it on, it's a little bit darker. The output of this is darker than the output of our noise texture, slightly. And that's because effectively we have remapped it. So what we're able to do now, what we want to do is adjust this gradient. So let's go to our node settings in our attributes here. And here is our gradient here. And look, if I crush the black and add contrast, look, you see it's getting darker. The darker bits are getting darker. And if I then crush the whiter bits are getting whiter. And what this is saying, what these black and white values are saying in relation to our bump map is the dark parts will not have any bump and the light parts will have bump. So if we just take off this color ramp preview now you can see, look, that bump is only being actioned on the white parts of that noise. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now what we need to do is, if we go back to our color, there's not enough detail here in this noise. We want more detail. So look, let's go to our noise texture and just increase this detail way up. And now you can see, look how much more detail there is in that noise. And now we have more detail. If we have a look at that bump, it's going to start looking more interesting. Look at what the normal map is now doing. This is looking fantastic. Although it's a little bit too strong, isn't it? Again, this is just meant to look like candy. Where that candy might have got a bit wet, it gets a bit bumpy like this. So let's go to our bump node, and we can either adjust the strength here, or we can do it in our attributes manager here. Let's put this strength way down to say, I don't know, 0.2. And now look, we've just got a bit of a suggestion of that bump. That's looking a lot better. And we can make further refinements to this. Look, let's take our color ramp. And what if, let's just see the output of this. It's always good to see what you're doing. Let's just move this along. We'll move our white knot, and then let's add another black knot. So we're really kind of isolating where we're going to get these bumpy areas. Remember, the black is going to be smooth, the white is going to be bumpy. So let's something maybe like this. Let's take that off so we can have a look at what that bump is doing to our normal map. So that's looking quite interesting now. So we could just leave that as is for the time being. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to make this colour a little bit more sophisticated, because at the moment it's just one red colour. So the way in which we're going to do that is we can actually use this same noise. So let's just move this color ramp down here that's driving the height in our bump map. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a new color ramp, which we're going to use to give it a nice, a more sophisticated color. So with this color ramp, we'll highlight it, hold Control, drag it up, and we're going to feed the factor again into there. And then this colour we're going to put into the colour of our principled shader. Now this is going to be wrong. It's going to turn it all black and white, which is not what we want. So obviously we need to remap this colour gradient. So let's just click on this. And instead of having it like this, let's just right click, reset to default. And on the black knot, let's make that red. And then the white knot, we again want it to be red, but just a lighter red maybe, something like this. And then let's duplicate this one. And with this knot, let's make it just slightly lighter. This knot, we can have it slightly darker. And we could maybe add just a fraction of orange into that. And a fraction of orange into this. So what we have here is just a slight difference. It's a very subtle difference that we're making to our red by giving it this nice mapped red gradient. If we hit the colour, it's almost you can almost not see it. If I move this knot, you'll probably start seeing, look, we can start seeing that mottled difference in our red. And it's just going to give us a little bit of variation, so it's not exactly the same. It'll be enough to trick the eye into seeing that this isn't just one uniform colour. All right, so that'll do us for now for our red shader. We can of course make adjustments to this, but what we're going to do, let's just close down our node editor. Let's go to our material manager here, and what we're going to do is with our candy red, let's duplicate it, and with the duplicated one, let's rename it straight away and call it candy white. And this one we're going to put on our white sweep object, and now we need to adjust this. Let's go into that material, and we'll do a couple of things. First of all, so the bump isn't exactly the same bump from the same noise, we could make an adjustment to this colour map. Let's just leave it as it is for now. Let's not complicate it. We'll leave it as it is for now. Let's just concentrate on the colour. So we'll go back to our colour ramp, and we'll go to the node settings of that ramp. Now obviously we don't want any colour in this at all, so let's take the saturation out of all of these knots. So we've just got a very, very subtle black to white gradient here. Let's just maybe darken that a little bit. Something like that. Something like that. Just to add a little bit of difference. And that's looking pretty good, I think. We can just leave that as is for now. Of course, we can make further adjustments to these materials when necessary. Excellent. So we're virtually there with the first bit of texturing. The only bit we need to texture now is our stuck particles mesh, which is this bit here, and we want this to be the same as our large chunks of snow flying off. And there's a brilliant shader that we're going to use for that requires actually almost no adjusting. So let's go to our material manager again, and we'll bring in a new cycles material. We want a surface, and we're going to bring in a translucent BSDF. Let's bring that in. This translucent BSDF, let's put it on our stuck particle mesh. And what we need to do to it, let's just double click on our translucent. Oh, actually, look, I've put our candy white on it accidentally. Let's put the translucent one on there. That's better. Now, this is looking a bit weird, admittedly. Let's just go to the translucent. Again, we have an output node, and we have our translucent shader. And all we're going to do is take the color and make it white. And that's it. Now at the moment, because this is translucent, it's looking a little odd. It doesn't look perfect at the moment, but you can see the translucency, you can see the colours beneath it. But once we start rendering the particles which we have rendered to this stuck mesh, this is going to start looking really cool. So let's just get rid of that material manager for now. So there we have our basic lighting and we have our basic materials. Now, of course, we can make further adjustments to these further down the line when it's necessary, and we can make adjustments to the lighting. We can increase or reduce the strength of these lights, add more lights if necessary. But for now, we have got the lighting and the material stages done. So now let's move on to sorting out our particles. Now we need to work out and understand how we are going to render our particles, what kind of geometry we're going to create from those particles, and how we're going to texture those. So in this tutorial, we'll just concentrate on the particles that we created in our system painted. So these are the residual particles that are stuck to the surface of our lollipop. Because when we've sorted out the geometry and the materials for these particles, we can then apply exactly the same settings and objects to our more complicated particles in our snow particles system. So let's do that. And first of all, what we could do is we could actually switch off our real-time preview. Let's just switch that off. And once more, let's just look at our viewport. Okay, so what we have, let's just close up our scene geo so we're more tidy. And let's go to our system painted, activate this, and we'll just switch it all on. Now we don't need to switch on our emitter that we use to paint the particles, which we created this mesh from. So actually, let's just take that, rename it so we know what it is. Let's call that emitter painted. And then we'll deactivate that, and we'll deactivate the OpenVDB mesher that we use to mesh those particles. And of course, that is what we used to create this translucent geometry that we've just textured. But we can switch that off because we don't need to do that for now. So if we go back to the first frame and we go forward a frame, you can see that we are generating two lots of particles here. We've got these big grey ones, which are the big lumps of ice, and there are emitter large volume particles. And then we've got these small particles which are on the surface of that translucent geo that we made, and these are the emitter small surface. So I think actually we could probably do with a few more of those. So let's just take that, go to our emission settings, and we've got 50,000. Let's increase that up to, I'm saying, let's try 80,000. And we'll just go forward a frame. So now we've got slightly more. All right, so what we want to do is we want to actually cache these particles before we come to wanting to render them. It's an always good idea to cache out your systems before render. So to do that, what we will do is we will go to our utilities folder in our painted system. We'll choose a utility, and we're going to bring in a cache object. In the cache object, let's have a look at our settings. I'll pull this out a bit. So we are going to cache to external files, and at the moment these are set to my documents on my C drive. So you can choose a different file location. You might want to have it in the same as your project file location. That's obviously a sensible place to save your cached data, but I'll just leave mine in my documents for now. This is a nice fast drive. We can also click only in same system, and that means that this cache object will only cache these particles in our system painted. It won't, if we open up this one, it won't try and cache these particles in our system snow particles. So that's going to be useful for us. Let's go back to that cache object. Okay, excellent. So we'll keep that as is. Now what we're going to do is, because these are static particles, these are never going to move. What we're able to do is just cache one frame really, and then we can just hold it on that. So I'll demonstrate. Let's go back to the first frame. We'll say build cache. It's chugging through. Then I'm going to hit cancel. And what that's done, if I move down, it's cached 27 frames worth of particles, and then I stopped it. So I must have stopped it on frame 27. But what we can do is this. If we go to the playback tab, we can do a couple of things. First of all, we can offset the cache by one frame, and that means on frame 0, We're now looking at the cache that was recorded at frame 1, so we've offset it by a frame. And then I can just press hold. And now it's just going to look at that first frame for the whole timeline. So this is no longer having to simulate those particles, and it's just using that one frame of cache information for our whole timeline. And because these particles are static, that's going to work perfectly well for us. Excellent. So now once that is done, we can now forget about those and we can look at rendering these particles. So let's get that sorted out. What we need to do is, well, we need to bring up our real-time preview again, actually. So let's go to INSYDIUM, Cycles, Real-Time Preview. And again, look, let's just dock it where it was. And we'll hit play to get that rendering. Now, because we've locked the camera, it stayed looking at that camera angle, which is fine. So now we want to render these particles. At the moment we can see them in our viewport, but we can't see any particles in our render over here. So how do we do it? Well, we need to give these emitters a tag so Cycles can read that particle data. So let's go to the tags, extensions, INSYDIUM tags, Cycles tags, and we need to give it an instance tag. Let's do that. And we've put the instance tag on the cache, which isn't correct. We need to put that on our emitter. So let's do it on the large ones first. And look, as soon as we've put that instance tag on our emitter, look, we have a sphere for every one of those large particles. And if we go to our instance tag, the reason we have a sphere, that is the default object that the instance tag creates for Cycles 4D. So for every particle, we now have a sphere, and we're able to set the segments of those spheres here. We can increase the size. So even though we've cached the particles at a certain size, we can adjust the size of the instances after the event, which is cool. We can add size variation after the event. So this gives you a huge amount of powerful control, even within a cached xparticles sim. So that's that. But what will make this better is, instead of just instancing these default spheres, we can actually instance any object we desire by dragging it into this objects list. So we can say for every particle position, we can instance an object. And we want to make some nice kind of random rough looking rocks, which we will then texture to make look like these lumps of ice. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at creating some custom geo, which we will then use to instance in all of these particle positions. So what we'll do is, look, let's make a new scene, and in this new scene we don't need to see this Cycles real-time preview. Let's switch that off. So we're going to create some geometry then for our little kind of shards of ice that are going to break off. So we'll do that with, let's just bring in a sphere primitive. We'll hit ND to see the lines. Let's put the radius of this way down. It needs to be tiny, doesn't it? So let's say, I don't know, 2 centimeters, and let's just come in nice and close. There we go. We're going to deform this sphere to make it look a bit rock-like. So we're going to want some nice, more even topology. So let's change the type from standard to, we could maybe try octahedron. These triangles might make some nice looking shards. So we'll do that. Then we will go to our deformers, and we want a displacer deformer. So the same thing as we used earlier in our scene. Let's put this as a child of our sphere. And the displacer, to displace the vertices of the surface of this sphere, it needs a shader to do that. It's based on black and white values. So let's go to our shading, and let's go to our shader menu, and we're going to use a good old noise. What would we do without noises? And then our noise, we're going to, let's go in it, and we're going to do a couple of things. Let's change the noise from this default noise to a VL noise, which gives us these few kind of curves. And then let's make this, it's way too big, let's make it a really small global scale. Let's try 16. All right, so now we're getting some pretty aggressive deformation, and that is obviously too much. So let's go to our displacer, and we need to have it be deformed not quite so much. So let's go to the Object tab, and we can change this height intensity from 10 to maybe 2, something like that. That's looking good. Okay. And there we go. So let's have a look. Let's have a look. Actually, the sphere, we've got the sphere at 2 centimeters. Let's just make it 1. And then we can always make adjustments to that later should we wish. But that's giving us a nice bit of deformation. Okay, so that's going to be 1 shard. Now what we want to do is make lots of copies of this. So they're all kind of slightly different. If every single instance you have is exactly the same, it's not going to look good, even if they're small. It's the brain might clock that something's not quite right, even if it can't directly see exactly what that is. So what we'll do is, look, let's just highlight the sphere, press Control and C to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. So we've got 10 spheres. That should be enough. But the problem with these 10 spheres is that they all are exactly the same. They're all identical. But here's a pretty cool trick. What we can do if we want to untwirl all of these, we can go to View, and look, we can unfold all. And now they're all unfolded. Now what I want to do is I want to select every displacer. Let's click every one. Is that it? There might be another one. One more. So all of those displacers are highlighted now. And now what we're going to do is go to the shading, go to the noise, and what we're going to do is if we give a different random seed to every displacer, then they'll all be slightly different. And we can do that with a cool trick. If we just put num times by, it could just be what, let's put num times 2, press enter, and now you can see, look, in the seed it says mixed, and it's saying mixed because we've got multiple ones selected and they all have something different. And if we go through these displacers individually now, you can see this one has a seed of 18, this one has a seed of 16, this one has a seed of 14, and so on. So they've incrementally been given a different seed, 2, 4, 6, 8. So that's really useful. And we could actually, look, let's go to View and Fold All, so they're all folded up. And if we wanted to view all of these, they're all on top of each other at the moment, we could use that same trick just to position them. So let's highlight them all, go to our coordinates, and on our X coordinates, let's put num times, this time times 3 maybe. And there, look, we've spread them all out. And we have created 10 different looking shards, which are going to work as our large chunks. So that's pretty cool. There's one more thing that we need to do before we can get this to work, is that the cycles instance tag that we're going to drop these objects into isn't going to be able to read the deformation from our displacers, but we can fix that just by putting them into join objects. So if we hold all of these spheres, select them all, hold Control and Alt, go to INSYDIUM, X Particles, Utilities, Join. Actually, I think we might need to just hold Alt. Let's see. I've got Control and Alt held down. Let's click on Join. No, that puts them all in one, which we don't want. We all want them in their separate join. So let's just hold Alt, go to INSYDIUM, X Particles, Utilities, Join. There we go, look, and now they've all been put in their own join object. Let's go to View, and we can go to Fold All. So now they're all folded up, and let's put all of these inside a null object. So Alt-G groups them together in a null, and let's call this Snow Chunks Geo. Okay, so now we have our snow chunks geo. This is what we're going to use to instance on our particle positions. So let's go to our null and hit Control and C to copy it. And then we'll go back into our scene. And what we want to do here is, remember, in our emitter large volume, we want to place these connected objects. Now we can't put the null in, we need to put them in separately, and that's for a specific reason. So let's just collapse our system, hit Control V to paste in that null with the geometry. Now what we want to do is a couple of things. We want to place these objects in our instance tag. So we could actually do that first. Let's open up that system painted. And what we want to do is let's highlight this one and this one all the way up, come down, go to our instance tag, and then we can just drag all of these into there. Now the cool thing about this is because we've placed 10 of these instances into our instance tag, it means it's randomly going to attribute one of those objects to the particle. So we're giving lots of different shapes and geometry to the same particle system. So if we now go to our INSYDIUM cycles real-time preview, let's get that open back up again, and we can dock it over here. And now look, there you see, we have got our lumps of ice stuck. Now obviously they're not textured yet, and there's another couple of things that we can do. So in our instance tag, what we want to do is we've got 10 different objects, but they're all orientated the same way. So what we can do is we can ensure that they've got random rotations on every axis. If we just put in this rotation offset, this enables you to rotate any instance object after the event, which again is very useful. So if we just put 360 in each, that's actually going to have made no difference to the look because we've just rotated every object by 360 on all axes, so they're back to the starting point. But now we're able to vary rotation by 100% on each axis, and that means that they now have definitely all got a different rotational value per instance. So it's going to again give the illusion that these are all different. So that's cool. So the last thing we need to do is we need to texture these, and then they're going to look better in our scene. And all we need to do is get our translucent material that we used for this bit of mesh here and put it on our large chunks. So let's go back to our material browser with this button, the material manager. Let's get our translucent, and a quick way of doing this, look, let's just put it on that top null, and then that's automatically being seen by our instances, and they're all now looking like translucent chunks. So that's working really well. One thing I like to do, just to be doubly sure, I know this is working, but I like to right click and let's go, what I want to do is copy tag to children and just make sure that all of those join objects have got that translucent material. Okay, so now we have got that in place. What we're able to do obviously is change the scale of these should we wish, but we've got the kind of the general idea of those onware. Now what we need to do is sort out these small surface particles, because they too are going to need some instances. So what we could do is, let's just click on this. Now if we just drag this tag onto here, it will work, and it'll copy all of the settings, so it'll be instancing all of our join objects as well, and that's going to work really well. But there's going to be 80,000 of these chunks all overlapping each other and trying to work out how that translucency is going to work. So to avoid that, let's just temporarily, on the one we're going to copy, on the big one, let's put the size multiplier just down really small to 1%, so they're tiny. Now let's hit Control, drag it onto our other emitter, and now on the large one, let's put that size multiplier back up, and we could put, I mean, We can put 70, we can make adjustments to this when we want to. And on our emitter small surface, let's put that size multiplier up to say 4. And now you can start seeing, look, we are instancing these snow particles on our mesh there. And all of a sudden, we're starting to see how this effect is going to work. Now, at the moment, we're just running through this pretty quickly, and we are texturing the particles that we've already got. We've created these materials, and we're going to move from here. When it comes to the final part of this production process, when we're doing a few test renders, we may adjust the particles, we may add more particles, we may try and delete some of the particles we're not happy with. But the main objective of this tutorial is to understand the technique, and that is what we have got. We have got lighting, we have got materials, we are instancing our custom geometry onto the existing particles, and we're rendering that with Cycles 4D. And even just very quickly with our kind of draft settings here, we're getting something that is starting to get close to the look that we want for our final render. So in the next tutorial, we'll move on to looking at our much more complicated snow particles system. We will get our geometry textured as well. That is the animating snow shell. And then obviously we'll be setting up the draft render settings and then looking at the final render settings from there.